The first sound was the soft snap of the deadbolt. One twist, too. I didn't even bother to breathe quietly. She never woke up when I moved at night. She'd stopped noticing me months ago. But this time, I wasn't sneaking out for a midnight drive. This time, every click of the lock was a drumbeat telling me, go now or never. Outside the window, the sky was the color of cold metal. Inside, the house smelled like her expensive candles, eucalyptus and something sweet. The ones I kept buying even though she never paid me back. Boxes lined the hallway, but not mine. Her online orders. Shoes, skincare, little luxuries stacked up like trophies. Meanwhile, my bag sat on the floor with only 3 shirts and a watch. I'd already emptied my wallet of every photo of us. Left it on the counter next to her phone. The screen still glowed from a message she'd forgotten to lock. Are you sure he won't show up? Followed by a winking emoji from a number I didn't recognize. My stomach had been twisting for hours. I'd read that message over and over until the words stopped making sense. All week she'd been too tired to talk, too tired to eat with me, but apparently not too tired to plan something without me. The bedroom door was cracked. I could see her foot dangling off the bed. Toenails painted the shade I'd bought her for our anniversary. She looked serene, like a stranger who'd wandered into my house and fallen asleep in my sheets. On the dresser, I'd left my wedding ring. Not thrown, not hidden, just there like an exhibit. Next to it, I'd placed the spare house key. I even stacked the car fobs neatly, like she liked to line up our utensils. The weirdest part? No rage. No shaking hands. Just a hollow calm. The kind of calm you feel right before a big storm hits somewhere else. Downstairs, the dog whined once, and then curled back up, sensing something but not sure what. I crouched and scratched behind his ears. She's all yours now, I whispered, voice cracking even though no one could hear me. I walked to the front door, pulling my hood up, and paused. Everything behind me, the bills, the memories, the dinners eaten in silence, looked like a museum display under the soft glow of the hallway light. It was mine and not mine at the same time. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but some instinct made me swipe. A man's voice, low and careful. You need to leave before she wakes up. She's not who you think she is. And that's when my legs went weak. The voice stopped me cold. I froze halfway down the front steps, one hand gripping the railing, the other still holding the phone. My breath hitched. The morning air was damp, and suddenly the chill wasn't just on my skin, it was in me. Who is this? I whispered, but the line had already gone dead. I checked the number. It wasn't saved, obviously, but there was something about it that didn't feel random. Area code from a city we'd never visited. I stared at it like it might rearrange itself into a name. But it didn't. Just 10 meaningless digits, and a warning that shattered any illusion I had of quietly slipping away. I stood there for a second too long, trying to convince myself it was some prank, maybe a wrong number. Maybe someone mistook me for someone else. Maybe I was still asleep. Then I heard movement inside. A floorboard creaked upstairs, the one just outside the bathroom. She was awake. I bolted. Not dramatically, just fast enough. Into the car, engine low, headlights off. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see her figure in the window, confused or smug, or whatever expression she'd wear once she noticed the emptiness. I drove without a plan, hands gripping the wheel like I was keeping myself from unraveling. I hit the highway before the sun had fully cracked the horizon. The bag in my back seat buzzed again. Another call. Same number. This time, I answered before the second ring. Keep driving, the voice said. Who are you? I asked, louder than I meant to. I'm trying to help you. Help me with what? There was a pause. Then, you really think she was just cheating on you? I didn't know how to answer that. Of course I thought that. What else could it be? I'd seen the messages. The strange charges on her cards. The late-night showers. The distance. The gaslighting. What else could it be? She didn't tell you about the storage unit, did she? My heart slammed against my ribs. What storage unit? I'll send the address. Don't go yet. Wait. I'll call you when it's safe. Safe from what? I asked again, but this time the silence lingered longer. Then the call ended without warning. I pulled into an empty rest stop a half hour later. My hands were trembling. I splashed cold water on my face in the bathroom and looked at my reflection under the flickering light. The same pathetic version of me stared back, bagged eyes, a week's worth of quiet resentment packed beneath them, mouth slightly open like it wanted to scream, but had forgotten how. Storage unit? I paced the parking lot for 10 minutes, staring at my phone, willing it to buzz again. When it finally did, I expected another call. But it was a text. No words. Just a photo. Her. In a warehouse-like room. Standing next to a plastic container with a padlock. And next to that container was my passport. I hadn't even realized it was missing. But someone had it. She had it. Or at least she had. Until now. I zoomed in on the photo, and that's when I saw it. Behind her, on the metal wall, was something scribbled in thick red marker. Something that didn't make sense until that moment. It said, "Owen doesn't leave. Ever." And it was written in my handwriting. For the longest time, I just stared at the photo, fingers numb, mind refusing to believe what my eyes were screaming. The timestamp was from 4 days ago. She'd been there. She'd been in that exact place, next to that container, holding what now looked like my life inside it. And that handwriting, I'd recognize it anywhere. It was mine. Blocky, slightly slanted, rushed the way I write when I'm angry. Or afraid. But I hadn't written it. Unless. I dropped the phone on the hood of the car and backed away from it like it might explode. My breath was shallow. The edges of the world blurred for a second. I forced myself to sit on the concrete curb and press my palms into my knees until the ground stopped shifting. I hadn't slept. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe this was my brain misfiring from too many nights of pretending I was okay. I'd had dreams before that felt real. Dreams where she was kissing someone else, laughing behind my back. And I'd woken up choking on my own guilt for even dreaming it. But this wasn't a dream. The sun was up. The photo was still there. And someone had my passport. That meant I couldn't leave the country if I needed to. That meant someone was planning ahead. That realization hit me harder than anything else. Not just that she'd been cheating, but that someone had been preparing for me to disappear. And maybe not on my own terms. The voice on the phone knew more. Much more. I was no longer just some neglected husband with a dramatic exit plan. I was in the middle of something I didn't understand. Something bigger than infidelity. I wanted answers, but I was also terrified of them. Still, I couldn't sit still. I had to move. I drove another 50 miles west, toward nothing in particular, until I found a cheap roadside motel with paint peeling off the door frames and a flickering vacancy sign. Perfect. The kind of place no one would look for a guy like me because no one looks for someone who doesn't even know where he's going. The room smelled like mildew and burnt coffee. I locked the door, double-checked the windows, and finally collapsed on the bed, phone clutched in my hand. And then I did something stupid. I messaged her. Just one sentence. Who else knows about the storage unit? She replied in under a minute. What storage unit? That was either the best lie I'd ever seen or the most terrifying truth. Because 5 seconds later, my phone rang again. Same number. Same voice. She's tracking you now, he said calmly. That message was enough. My throat tightened. Who the hell are you? I told you. I'm trying to help you. But you're making it harder. Don't contact her again. Not unless you want to end up like the last one. I blinked. The last what? There was a pause. A slow, cold pause that felt like a noose tightening. Then he whispered, "You're not the first Owen she's been with." I didn't sleep. I lay there on the creaking mattress with my clothes still on, my shoes half kicked under the bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it sliced the stale air into uneven gusts. My brain kept looping the stranger's last words. You're not the first Owen she's been with. It didn't even make sense. Owen isn't a common name, but it's not exactly rare either. Was he saying she'd been with another guy named Owen? Was he saying I was some kind of repeat? The longer I thought about it, the more I felt like the walls themselves were shrinking in. I forced myself to sit up. The room was dark except for the thin neon stripe leaking through the blinds from the sign outside. Everything smelled like damp carpet and old smoke. I rubbed my eyes and noticed something on the small desk against the wall. A folded piece of paper. I swore it hadn't been there when I checked in. I hadn't seen anyone come or go. Hands trembling, I picked it up. No envelope, just a single page. My name at the top, Owen, written in the same slanted handwriting as the photo on my phone. Underneath, 3 lines. Stop asking questions. Storage Unit 47B. She's on her way. My heart thudded so loudly, I thought it would shake the thin door off its hinges. I spun around and stared at the doorknob, half expecting it to start turning. It stayed still. No sound from the hallway. No footsteps outside. Just that paper, sitting like a bomb on the desk. I tried to think logically. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe some psycho was messing with me. But how would they know I'd stopped here? I'd paid cash. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Unless the voice on the phone was never a rescuer. Maybe it was bait. Maybe all of this was designed to pull me out of my life and into this nightmare. I stuffed the paper in my jacket pocket and slowly peeled back the motel curtains. The parking lot was empty except for my car and a white van parked 2 spaces away. No logos. No plates I could see. Its windows were tinted so dark they looked like mirrors. For a split second, I thought I saw movement inside, a shape shifting against the glow of the sign, but it vanished before I could focus. Every instinct told me to run. Get in the car, drive until the gas runs out, throw the phone out the window, and forget all of this. But then another instinct, the one that had been suppressed for years of quiet humiliation, rose up. If I ran now, I'd never know the truth. I'd be another ghost in someone else's story, another man who just left. I sat back on the bed, phone clutched like a weapon, and started typing into the search bar. Storage Unit 47B. The address popped up instantly. Not far from here, a self-storage complex off the highway. Open 24 hours. Gate code access. And suddenly I could almost smell the place. The cold concrete and metal roll UPS. The echoes of footsteps between rows of locked doors. My phone buzzed again. Not a call. A new photo. It was her car, parked outside the very same storage facility. Timestamp, 10 minutes ago. I stared at it, and in the background of the shot, reflected faintly in a puddle, was a figure holding a phone. And for one sickening second, I thought it might be me. I didn't even feel my fingers turn the key in the ignition. I must have driven there on muscle memory alone, guided more by dread than direction. The roads blurred beneath me, every turn sharper than the last, like I was spiraling towards something I couldn't stop even if I tried. The storage facility sat just outside the edge of town, squat, gray, lifeless, the kind of place no one notices unless they're already looking for it. A perfect hiding spot. Or a graveyard. I pulled up to the gate. No one in the booth. No security cameras I could see, which somehow made it worse. I typed in the code from the photo, 4774, and the gate buzzed open like it had been waiting for me. My headlights cut through the rows of identical doors, corrugated metal stretching in every direction. Unit 47B was near the back, tucked behind a broken light that kept flickering like a dying firefly. I parked 2 spaces away and sat in the silence. My heart was hammering now, no calm left. Just noise. I stepped out of the car, gravel crunching under my boots, and walked toward the unit. It looked just like the others. No markings, no sign of anything strange. But the second I touched the cold metal handle, I felt it. That static buzz. Like the air itself didn't want me to open it. I did anyway. The door groaned as I lifted it, slow and shaking, revealing a single hanging bulb that flickered on as if it knew I was coming. Inside was a setup. Not junk. Not boxes. It looked like a shrine or a crime scene. Maybe both. There were photos of me. Dozens. Some I didn't even know existed. Me at the grocery store, me filling up the car, me sitting on the porch with the dog. All printed and pinned to the plywood wall in a grid, some with little notes scribbled beneath them. 6:42 p.m. He cried after phone call. Didn't confront me, compliant. Too trusting. Then I saw the center photo. One I definitely didn't take. It was me asleep in bed. Alone. And the angle was impossible, unless someone had been standing in the room. Right there. Watching me. My knees nearly gave out. I stumbled back against a shelf, knocking something to the floor. A plastic storage tub popped open on impact, spilling its contents. Clothes. Mine. Old hoodies, a pair of jeans I thought I'd donated, a toothbrush, even my college ID. Things that had been missing over the years. Things she always said I'd just misplaced. I dropped to my knees and dug deeper. At the very bottom of the tub was a sealed envelope. My name on the front. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Precise. Cold. Owen 3. Current emotional stability at 42%. Subject exhibits increasing passivity. Projection. Full disappearance within 5 to 7 days. Memory disruption successful. Begin Owen 4 prep sequence immediately. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't. It had to be a joke, some twisted game. But then I saw the corner of the paper. It had a printed date. 2 weeks ago. Which meant she hadn't just expected me to vanish, she'd planned it. Me. My breakdown. My exit. And worse, she had already started looking for my replacement. And just as that thought landed, I heard the unmistakable sound of a car engine rolling up behind me, and the storage unit light flicked off. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The light overhead snapped off with a sharp electric click, and I was left in the dark with only the sound of gravel shifting under slow tires behind the unit. My body locked up. I crouched low and reached blindly for the storage unit door, but it was still half open, casting a faint silver outline into the night from a distant floodlight outside. Not enough to see, just enough to be seen. The engine cut. A car door opened, closed, then silence. I pressed my back against the inside wall and forced myself not to move, not to make a sound. My heart was hammering so loud, I was convinced it would echo off the metal walls. I waited, counted. 10 seconds. 20. Still nothing. Then I heard the footsteps. Slow, methodical, one by one, crunching gravel. Getting closer. They stopped just outside. I could feel the presence, like heat bleeding through the metal. I could see a shadow shifting across the opening. No flashlight. No voice calling my name. Just waiting. I reached into the box beside me, fingers fumbling across old keys, receipts, junk, until I felt something solid. A heavy flashlight. I gripped it like a weapon, then waited. The silence stretched so long I began to wonder if I'd imagined the footsteps. But then a voice whispered, low and casual, too calm for the situation. You weren't supposed to come here alone, Owen. It wasn't her voice. It was a man. Calm, measured, and terrifying. I stayed frozen, not daring to answer. You were supposed to break. Quietly. Fade. Like the others. Now look what you've done. You made it messy. My skin crawled. My mouth was dry. The back of my throat burned with the urge to scream, or run, or both. Instead, I did the only thing my panicking brain could come up with. I killed the light entirely, dropped to my stomach, and rolled under the bottom of the half-open door. The gravel bit into my arms as I hit the ground and rolled into the adjacent alley between units. I crawled fast, staying low. Behind me, I heard him curse under his breath, then the heavy thud of his boots chasing after me. I didn't look back. I reached the end of the row and turned a hard left toward the gate. My car was too far. No time. But I spotted the white van still parked at the edge of the lot. Same one I'd seen at the motel. It was his. Or hers. Or theirs. I didn't care. I just knew one thing. It was unlocked. I scrambled to the passenger side, flung the door open, and dove in. And then I froze again. Because the inside of the van wasn't empty. It was a mobile setup, walls lined with photo printouts, notepads with scribbled timelines, maps with pins and string like a conspiracy web. And in the center, mounted on a board, were 3 profiles. Each labeled Owen. Each with a different face. Each with a different ending. The first was labeled deceased, unsuccessful transfer. The second, missing, monitored. And the third, my photo. Active, escalated response required. I backed out of the van so fast I slammed into the side mirror and stumbled hard. And that's when I saw him. The man. Tall, mid-40s, salt and pepper beard, dressed like someone forgettable on purpose. He wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't need one. He looked me straight in the eye and said one sentence that shattered what was left of my understanding. She didn't choose you, Owen. You were assigned. I don't remember making the decision to run. My body just did it. Legs moving before my mind caught up. Feet barely touching the ground as I tore across the gravel lot, blind to everything but escape. The man didn't chase me. That was somehow worse. He just stood there, hands in his jacket, like he'd already won. Like I was exactly where he expected me to be. I made it to the far fence and vaulted it without thinking. Ripped my jacket, scraped my palm, didn't care. I landed hard and kept going until the lights of the storage facility were behind me. My car was still there, but I couldn't risk going back to it. Not now. Not when I didn't know who else was watching. I ducked behind a dumpster outside a gas station, trying to catch my breath. My entire body was shaking, not just from the sprint, but from the weight of his words. Assigned. What the hell did that even mean? Was I part of some sick experiment? Some social manipulation scheme? I replayed every moment of our relationship, every red flag I'd ignored, every strange thing she'd said or done that I brushed off as stress or mood swings. And suddenly all of it came flooding back. The night she asked me if I ever had déjà vu with people. The weird way she'd sometimes pause during arguments and seem to reset. The fact that I couldn't remember the exact way we met, only what she'd told me later. She'd always been in control of the narrative. Of everything. I dug the folded page from my pocket, the typed log from the storage unit. Owen 3, current emotional stability at 42%. There had been others. Not just other men. Other me's. Was it a nickname? A type? Or something far more twisted? I found a 24-hour diner down the street, sat in the far corner booth, and ordered coffee I wouldn't drink. The waitress didn't ask questions. She probably saw worse at 3 a.m. than a pale, wild-eyed man in a ripped jacket with trembling hands. I pulled out my phone again and stared at the last thing she'd texted me. What storage unit? She knew. She had to. But part of me still wanted her to deny it. To call me crying and say it was all a misunderstanding. That she wasn't part of this. That they were doing this to her, too. I opened our shared cloud drive. Something we hadn't used in months. There was a new folder, titled Legacy. Inside, one single video file. No title, no description, just a timestamp from 2 hours ago. I hesitated only a moment before tapping play. It opened on her face, my wife, sitting calmly in what looked like a sterile room, white walls behind her, hair perfectly styled, no emotion in her eyes. She didn't blink for the first 10 seconds. Then she said, "If you're watching this, you figured it out earlier than projected." Her voice was flat, robotic, programmed. Not her. "I want to clarify something for the sake of closure," she continued. "This was never about love. Love was simply the most reliable framework for prolonged observation. You performed within the expected tolerances until deviation began. At that point, contingency protocols were activated." I stared, jaw slack, unable to move. She went on, "You are not in danger, Owen. Not unless you continue resisting. The collapse of emotional attachment was essential to your phase transition. You were not chosen. You were retrieved, assigned, tracked, and now released." Then, for the first time in the video, she smiled. That same soft smile she used to give me when I cooked dinner or folded her sweaters exactly the way she liked. Owen 3 is complete. Goodbye. The screen went black. I sat in the booth for what felt like hours. I didn't speak. I didn't move. My coffee went cold. The waitress refilled it twice without me noticing. When I finally looked up, a man was sitting at the counter across from me. Not the same one from before. This one was younger, wearing my brand of coat. My haircut. Same boots. He turned slightly, just enough to meet my eyes. And he looked exactly like me. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the version of myself seated casually at the counter, stirring a coffee he hadn't sipped. It wasn't just a resemblance. It was me. My jawline. My nervous knee bounce. Even the way he rested 2 fingers on the rim of the cup, like I always did. He didn't speak. Just watched me with calm, curious eyes. And then he did something I didn't expect. He smiled. Not in a threatening way. Not smug. But like someone who knew the ending before I even saw the middle. He stood slowly, dropped a few bills on the counter, and walked past me toward the door. As he passed, he leaned in, and in a voice that didn't quite sound like mine but felt like it should have, he said, "You broke the loop, Owen. That's all that matters." And then he was gone. I sat there stunned, that phrase echoing in my head. You broke the loop. I didn't understand it. Not fully, but it felt like truth. Maybe all those notes in the storage unit, the numbered Owens, the video message from her. Maybe it wasn't just manipulation. Maybe it was a system, a cycle, and I'd done the one thing none of the others had. I'd walked away before it consumed me. That thought anchored me. I felt it in my chest like a pulse that had been missing. I wasn't trapped anymore. I wasn't being studied or broken down or transitioned. They had planned for compliance, for collapse, but I'd chosen freedom, clarity, escape, and now I was still me. I left the diner as the sky began to brighten, that soft gray blue just before sunrise. I didn't have a plan, but for the first time in months, I didn't need one. I just drove. No one followed. No strange calls. No more files or folders or warnings. Just the road, open and long and waiting. Eventually, I found a town where no one looked twice at me. I rented a small cabin near a lake. I chopped my own wood, drank too much tea, read the books I never finished. I didn't post online. I didn't use my real name. I stopped needing answers and started building a life from the silence. Weeks later, I got one final message, A physical letter, no return address, slipped under my door. Inside, a photo. It was her, standing in a field of tall grass, alone, not posing. She looked human, soft, tired maybe, but no tricks, no calculations in her eyes. On the back of the photo, in handwriting that didn't quite look like hers or mine, were just 3 words. You were real. I sat on the porch for a long time after that. No tears, just peace. Because maybe, in the middle of all the manipulation and confusion and control, something had been real. Maybe I wasn't just a subject in a test or a cog in a system. Maybe she hadn't expected me to wake up, to walk out, to fight for clarity, to reclaim myself. But I had. I wasn't Owen 1, or 2, or 3. I wasn't a number. I was me, and I was free.